My name is Liz Ward Singh. I'm joint director of a charity called Shark Guardian. My husband, Brendan Singh, is in the audience as well. And we've committed ourselves to this charity since July this year when we became an official charity. We're both diving instructors. I've been diving in Thailand waters since 2007. Diving full stop, we've witnessed a big decline in shark numbers wherever we've been diving. So we decided to kind of commit ourselves to this to try and see if we can make a difference. So tonight I'm representing divers as well as the education that we're doing to try and get the messages out there.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lisa Thomas. I'm a director of CSR for Onyx Hospitality Group. When we started our CSR journey 4 years ago, we basically look at the impact that our hotel industry has on the environment and the community. So it's only natural for us to look at something that's closer to our operations. That's part of us is a restaurant services and supply chain. So it's kind of not a difficult decision to make when we decided to launch what you call the group's policy on non-selection of unethical supply chain. So that's when FinFree approached us, that was just the way to go.
My name is Bill Marinelli. I own the Oyster Bar in Bangkok, Southeast Asia's first sustainable-only seafood restaurant. I also own seafood companies in the United States and Indonesia. I'm a major importer and exporter of seafood from both Southeast Asia and the United States.
Okay, thank you. So as you can see, we have a nice mix and of an interesting panel from conservation, education, to the hotel and business, and then also with the restaurant and seafood industry. So I'm glad to have you all three here. Thank you for coming. And I know some of you have come from a ways as well. So hopefully I have some good questions for you guys. So well, how this is going to work, I have questions directed specifically to each of you. And however you are, even though it's not directed to you, you're also welcome to comment if you have something to comment afterwards, yeah? Okay. So the very first would be for Liz, okay? The first question is, how dire is the situation facing sharks? And what changes are you and fellow divers seeing underwater, particularly in Thailand's coastal waters?
Okay, so how dire is it out there, really? It's pretty dire, if that's kind of objective enough. And it's one of the reasons why myself and Brendan have committed ourselves to educating others. Have a look at this graph. So we're a little bit biased in that most of our contacts are kind of linked around the Andaman coast, so the west side of Thailand. This is a close friend of ours, an instructor, has over 1,500 dives within the Andaman Sea, mainly in the Similan Islands. So since the 2006-2007 season, seeing about 88 sharks in Thailand waters, that has now reduced to well, last season he saw 6 sharks in Thailand waters. So the previous graph showed it's a 90% reduction. This is one person, but I've got many testimonials with me from divers throughout the diving communities, Pattaya, Phuket, Koh Tao, Similans, around Lanta. What people are saying is the same. There's a huge, drastic reduction in sharks in our waters. We've seen that for ourselves, and we're trying to get the messages out there. So we're seeing a lack of sharks, but with that, the video you saw earlier, sharks are apex predators. Top of the food chain, they directly affect everything below them. Without the sharks, there's an imbalance in all the species below. And again, if you dive around a lot of the sites in Thailand now, you see less of the big fish as well. You kind of see more of the mid-level predators, snappers, things like that, and a reduction in things like parrotfish, the important fish that are there to keep the reefs healthy. Parrotfish eat the algae, so without those there, because of the imbalance, the reefs are starting to look unhealthy. There's been a lot of studies on this. There's actual evidence of the decline in reef structure. Even this last week in the media, there's been a big study done around in Australia showing that the reefs are dying, and it's because of the lack of sharks. So these are very, very real things that are happening.
I have a question for Lisa. The Similan Islands are essentially marine reserves, correct?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there is no commercial fishing. There is no commercial fishing, either illegally or legally, happening around that area.
Personally, and speaking on behalf of the diving community, yes, it is a marine reserve. It should be protected. There are laws in place, but we do see fishing boats on a regular occasion. The Similans are about to open in the next few weeks. We know that the first few dives on a lot of the key dive sites will be spent taking big fishing nets away from those sites before you can actually dive them.
So there is a lot of illegal fishing going on there.
We see fishing happening, for sure.
Okay. Did any of you wanted to comment more on that, or no?
Essentially, what I'm wondering how much of the decline in shark sightings and the decline in the shark population is due to finning versus overfishing.
Right.
Period. Not just the consumption of shark fin at Chinese weddings, but the worldwide problem of overfishing.
Right. Okay. Okay.
I mean, yeah, can I make a brief comment? We might touch on it later. The sharks that are being seen around Thailand in the fish markets, in the harbours, like Tap Lamu Harbour is the main harbour for the Similans. Divers are seeing more sharks on a day being landed there than they are in a whole season diving, and that's doing hundreds of dives. Those sharks that are seen are full sharks. It is the whole body. It is fishermen trying to make a living with whatever's left,
Yeah.
I think, with what's in the ocean.
Lisa, did you want to comment on that at
I
all?
just wonder, what action can be done after you discover that? Obviously you're not the only one who has witnessed it, and because we talk about having the law but no enforcement, it's kind of pointless, right? And
Very
also, when you witness something like this, it's also the question of what do you do about it?
I think we've asked ourselves the same thing. And when we got back to Koh Lak in March, having been educating in a lot of schools, the response from some of the dive centres was quite angry. What are you going to do about this? There are no sharks. There are no big fish left. Once they worked out, look, we are you guys. We've seen it. We're coming from the same angle you have. We hope now that we can be a bit of a voice from that. And as I say, we're compiling testimonials. Where it goes with that, I don't have the answer yet. But let's hope events like this can get these messages out there. And something start, if just people talking about it and people recognizing Thailand is used to be an amazing diving destination. There is still amazing diving, but it's certainly not what people are still making it out to be. And lack of sharks and lack of big fish is the big factor there.
Okay, before we go on to the second question, I'll just add to that a little bit with my own experience out on in the local communities. Sometimes it's very good that if you can get into the fishing communities or those who actually know about the ecosystem around there, because there are a lot of people within the fishermen villages that are very interested in this, and they've lived with this all their lives. So it's not generally the people in their local community, but it's people outside coming in to fish. And there has been other places in like Chumpon where they have a very good base of local fishermen who have chased away fishing boats. I mean, they still go out and fish, but when they notice there's other fishing boats coming around doing wrong things or dragging a net along the way, they do actually come out and say something. So it's not necessarily the authorities, but it's the people in the area that really makes a difference. So if you're out in that area and you can get to them, it would be a very, very good impact. So just future reference. So let's move along. Bill, this one is for you. I would like to talk a little bit about long lining, because I know this is a very huge impact to the environment now. So the question is that long line fishing describes the way the vast majority of sharks are caught. And can you tell us a bit about this commercial fishing, about the commercial fishing practice and some of the problems associated with it?
Longline refers to the use of tens of thousands of hooks on lines, sometimes strung out over the course of a couple kilometers. And they're set at night and then collected the next day. And they're indiscriminate fishing method. Anything that eats one of these hooks is caught. It is the second most destructive form of fishing. The most destructive form of fishing is trawling. Is using nets that are as big enough to hold 13 747 airplanes that are dragged along the bottom, scooping up everything in their path, destroying seamounts, destroying coral reefs, essentially just destroying the sea floor and wiping out very, very large populations of seafood at once and shellfish. So that's the major destructive fishing method is trawling. Longline is bad, but not quite as bad. Unfortunately, in the last 50 years, the seafood industry has gotten very efficient in catching fish. And we're just now starting to realize the amount of destruction that we're causing to the planet by these fishing methods. And essentially, we're going to have to go back to the old days of one hook, one line, one fisherman.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anybody want to comment on that? Any experience or ideas about this?
There is photographic evidence of the long line. I don't know what the word is, what you can see on the surface in the simulant.
Buoys?
Is that it?
Yeah, the little things that float.
Yeah.
Buoys.
Once people start to work out what they are, and they are certainly seen within marine protected areas, and we have photographic evidence of that, and that's in the simulant.
I think
Nancy.
Nancy, I'm sorry. I think Nancy made a very valid point about who could be probably your best friends in the Simulant Islands. It would be the local fishermen. And if you can get them, they're fishing for livelihood and for feeding their families, and usually using a traditional fishing method of one line, one hook. And they're not destructive fisheries. If you can get them on board and helping police the areas and chasing away the fishing boats that are doing the drag nets and the long lining, because they'll cut the buoys. They'll do what it takes and pull up the nets and foul the nets, and if you can get them on board, they'll help protect the fisheries over there.
Yeah, we'd like to, and we hope so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, anything? No comment. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, because I have heard that a lot of the long lining and even the trawling just takes everything in its path, even from turtles to dolphins to anything that gets caught on there. And a lot of the animals that do need to breathe can't come back up to breathe, and that's how they end up dying, right?
It's a very destructive form of fishing.
Right. Okay. Okay, let's just switch over to a little bit of the CSR and consumer side. So this question is for Lisa. Okay, a total of 12 hotels under Onyx have joined the fin-free blue list earlier this year. So what do you see as the key benefits for hotels in making menus more environmentally sustainable? And where is the drive from this coming from?
First of all, I mean, when you build a hotel, it's a big investment, and obviously the owner want to go in there for the long run. And a hotel basically sell destinations, and majority of hotels are resorts, especially in Thailand, in the south. I mean, you hear stories like this. If the environment of the destinations is really poor, it's going to affect your business. So by looking after the environment, basically we look after an investment. So I think that's kind of a no-brainer. As to the make the menus more sustainable, I see it in two folds. Partly, it's not only the benefits of the environment, but also it's cost-effective, really. And another thing is you source your local produce. basically you build a stronger relationship with the community as well. And you know, if you're talking about CSR, people use the term CSR a lot, but accountability is the key in doing CSR. I mean, when I heard Seamus talking about hotel, you know, saying something and actually doing something, I mean, it's a horror story, and I'm always very careful. So I think that's directly linked to our reputation. So in this age and time, I think there's no place to hide. So if you think you're going to get away with it, I think that's very foolish.
Yeah, social media is very powerful
Yes.
these days, right?
Yes.
One little slip like Rihanna right now is all over the place, right? So yeah, okay, that's a very good point. Do any of you two want to comment?
I agree with Lisa. The reason why I've become interested in sustainable fishing practice and sustainable seafood, I was telling my friend I just met from the Financial Times tonight that it's partially a good business decision. I want to have a viable company for another 20, 30 years. I have my second, you know, generation of employees coming on, and I want them to have a job in the next 20, 30 years. So it's important for me to get involved in educating people about sustainable fishing and sustainable seafood so that I still have a job in 20 years from now. What am I going to sell? Shoes? Mm-hmm. So besides, you know, the nasty health associated with eating certain seafood, especially shark fin, it's also makes wise business to be educating the consumers. It has to be a grassroots movement. The consumers have to stop asking for products on the menu that are environmentally and physically damaging first before the corporations, big corporations, do it. But to me, it makes good business sense to start learning and educating about sustainable food management practices.
Okay.
If I just may add one thing, you know, in Thailand, the hotel industry is quite cutthroat. You know, there's always newer rooms, bigger rooms, better rooms, you know, all the hardware competition. And I think sustainability provides a platform for a healthier form of competition. It's kind of a win-win for investor, you know, for operator, and also for the community. So I suppose that's probably the drive for us as well.
Right. I mean, Liz, did you want to comment anything from the diver side? I mean, I know there's some divers that are responsible, like some schools, and some that are not. Do you have any comment to add to this consumerism?
No, I think it's covered.
It's covered, yeah, okay. All right. Well, Lisa, I have another question for you, if you don't mind. I continue on with you, yeah? Because this is a very important topic in terms of consumer and really getting down into the business of it, because that's the main drive, right? So what do you think are the main challenges for your own hotel management group when it comes to introducing the CSR policy to not serve shark fin? And maybe can you give us some insight on how it's been rolled out?
I think it's the popularity of the shark fin itself that posted the challenge, especially amongst the Asian customers that we have for a hotel here. Before we introduced the group policy on ban of shark fin in March 2012, it was a long process, I mean, over 6 months. And we think it's one thing to introduce a policy from the head office and let the general managers and the chef deal with it. But the fact is that that would be irresponsible, really. So we started with making a conversation with general managers and the chefs and said, what can we do to make this happen? And obviously the concern from the general managers would be the potential loss of revenue. They ask, how am I supposed to justify to the owners? So we look at the figures, and that was, I think, towards the end of 2011. And then the Peninsula came out, and the Shangri-La came out and announced their ban on shark fin. And that was kind of really the big push, kind of reassurance really for the general managers that, look, guys, if these people, Hong Kong owned, Chinese owned, able to come out. We are in Thailand and we should be able to do this pretty easily. So that's when we announced the policy. Now, when you have a policy, how do you actually encourage the GMs and the chef to take ownership? Because for us, that's the way to make whatever you want to do effective. So we provided them a tool, a communication tool. So how do their sales staff deal with the requests of shark fin? How do you explain it? If when the guests ask for in a restaurant, if there's a complaint, what to say, and we asked the chef to come up with alternative dishes that that we believe that is equally prestigious, and at the same time, when we launched in March, basically we had to honor all the bookings prior to that, but a definite cutoff date, and that's what we said in the beginning. When we say cutoff, that means zero, as in no purchase, no stocking, no offering, no sideline, because, as I said, the reputation is at stake here. So that's how we did it, really, and the fact that we also have properties in Hong Kong, that was a bit of a challenge. Because we also have to talk to the owner. But luckily in Hong Kong, I think the change was actually more advanced than in Thailand. So we kind of managed to do that.
Right. Okay. Well, unfortunately, Steve from Freeland couldn't be here, but I'm sure he can also kind of comment on something like this. Is that from the years that he actually came out and did the shark fin campaign, and they were sued and all these things. I'm not going to go into those details, but I just think within 10 years, right? And now they're restarting. I mean, they're one of the headers of this campaign, and we're seeing that people are more inclined to say, yes, we like this idea, and it's generally the change in mindset of the people. So yeah. I think it's
true, yeah. Because the one questions that we asked the general managers who cited the potential loss of revenue is that, are you saying that and the guests that come to your property only come for shark fin? Are you saying that your facility is not good enough? Are you saying that you're not providing quality services and you're not providing quality good food? That people would drop you and will not come back to your property simply because you're not serving shark fin. So we get them to, actually it's a good exercise, because then people become more innovative and more creative. Mm-hmm. And I think the key is also to make sure that they know that we are listening and trying to look for solution, rather than say it's a problem and drop it,
Okay. Did any of you want to comment?
I just wondered, have you had anyone yet approach you to have their wedding with you or an event because you don't serve shark fin anymore? Have you had it turn the other way?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there were guests especially for Chinese wedding, who turned to other hotels, and that was one of the reasons that the general managers were also concerned about. That we're going to basically give our competitors the business. But the fact is, I can tell you today, I'm actually very pleased, because I was also quite like, oh God, what happened if the whole revenue collapsed? But I'm pleased to tell you, actually, the revenue hasn't really gone less at all. So I think it's like anything else. When there's a challenge, that always open doors to other opportunities. So you just have to come with new tactic, really.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. I'm happy for that.
I agree that by taking a stand on something that is very controversial and very clear on that it's not a good practice, I think you're able to attract other business of the market segment that is concerned about the environment, about their health, eco-friendly resorts, eco-friendly tourism, and you're able to take that road and you know, you can educate the customers to a certain extent that come in looking for shark fin, but I would go more towards trying to source out the customers that would come to you because you don't have shark fin. I think that was the point you're trying to make, is there's other people out there that are more concerned about going to a place that doesn't have shark fin than there are probably people that insist on shark fin at the wedding meal.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to move on. It's still going along the lines of what Lisa's saying in terms of trying to overcome the challenges of trying to change the consumers and putting things in the hands of the GM. But Bill, this question is actually for you, so maybe you can give us a little bit of advice. As a seafood wholesaler and restaurateur, what are the main challenges associated with sourcing sustainable seafood? And what would you advise restaurants and even in hotels looking into improving the sustainability of their menus? What should they do first?
Well, that's a big question. Let's break it down into pieces. Piece number one is what are the challenges in working with sustainable seafood?
Right.
From a food and beverage operation side of it, like a restaurant or a hotel, the challenge is that you know, fishermen go fishing, not catching. So we have to get away from pre-printed menus that, you know, guarantee a certain type of fish on the menu, and work with what fishermen are catching rather than what we want them to catch. This is why there's been so much salmon farming going on, is now we can just count on it and it's inexpensive and we're always going to have it. It can stay on the menu. So that's the first challenge, is changing the way we operate our F&B businesses to support sustainable fisheries by working with, you know, daily printed menus. Everyone's kind of forgotten about fish of the day, you know, daily catch of the day. You know, you go to a place like New York, Seattle, Los Angeles, London, Brussels, whatever, the menus are a blackboard. You know, we got herring in, we got sardines, and we got some of this and whatever. And when the next boat comes in and they catch this or that, that's what goes on the menu. So that's the first challenge, is getting away from these pre-printed, you know, plastic-coated menus that say salmon, snowfish, tuna, sea bass. So that's the first challenge. The second question was, what does the consumer do? We've gotten used to asking a lot of questions about our food. I mean, look at the wine industry over the past 25 years. Wine menu when I was growing up had a red, a white, maybe a sparkling on it. You know, now there are textbooks. And we ask questions like, well, what grape is this, and what variety, and where is it from, and was it done in stainless steel? And we were getting all into, you know, asking questions about wine. And now, you know, we're working with microbrews, and we're learning about beer and how beer is made, and we're asking questions, and we want to know if this is organic, we want to know if this is hydroponic, we want to know if this has been, you know, industrial fed cow or a pasteurized cow. We're starting to have to ask a lot of questions about what we eat and what we drink, what kind of gas we put in our car, whether we go with a hybrid or not, whether it's diesel. It's all going to come down to that, asking the question. Where is this fish from? How is it caught? Is it sustainable? Was it wild or farm raised? It's gonna come down to that. The consumer is gonna have to make the wait staff and the chef and the F&B and everyone in line be responsible for what they're purchasing. You go to a buffet, you won't see shark fin at a buffet, but you will see farmed salmon. Complain. Why are you serving that? That's no good. It's unhealthy, it's unsustainable, and it's damaging the ocean. You should take that off the buffet. I'm not going to come here anymore, and I'm going to tell all my friends. This is what's going to happen. We're going to have to make Villa Market, you shouldn't be carrying this, right? Hotels, I'm going to your property because you're working with sustainable seafood. Your chef, your F&B, your menus, it's going to have to be a grassroots movement, the consumer making demands on the industry to start being responsible in what they purchase.
Right. very good point there, actually. Did any of you want to comment on that?
I mean, I agree with what he said. The fact is that executed, it's a different thing. But you have to start somewhere. So it's not going to happen overnight. You know, I mean, in hotel operation, you're talking about sometimes you have, say, 200 people coming. I mean, you can't really wait for a catch of the day in a way. You know, food management works differently. But I think it's also a matter of demand and supply. So if we get everybody, you know, together and kind of have this kind of conversation, find a solution, I think that's probably the way to move forward. The challenge is that, you know, you always have like, you know, private sector, then you have like the consumers, and then you have the government, and they all work on different things, you know. So it would be really great if, you know, we can kind of have kind of a really a good movement for everybody to kind of work on it together. And I think that's the only way we can do it. Because I talked to the chef a lot, and I said, like, you know, why can't you, you know, buy organic, you know, rice, or, you know, make it like permanently on our menu? He said, oh, Kun Lisa, that's the cost. You know, it's more expensive. That's drive my food costs higher. And, you know, so how am I going to, you know, justify that? So there's always the financial side and business side of that you have to be aware of, because, you know, at the end of the day, we also responsible to our owners. So
I think part of it, before you continue, I think also part of it is that we need to educate everybody else, because I don't think everybody knows what is sustainable, or what. Some people don't even know what they're eating, actually. So they're just, oh, it's a fish. I don't know what fish it is, but it's a fish. Right, so I think that a lot of education needs to go into the consumers as well. I would agree that the hotels and the restaurants should be the step to say that, okay, we have sustainable stuff. But yeah, if people don't know about it, then they're just going to eat random things. But Bill, you wanted to continue on with the comment?
My answer to the chef that wants to know how to switch to organic rice versus whatever rice is serve less. We're serving 100% GABA rice, organic GABA rice. GABA is the amino acid that's very high in this unmilled, gently milled rice with the kernel, and it's infused with green tea. And my staff, being Thai, didn't like it at all. It's got a more nutty flavor. It's more robust. You can't overcook it, or you lose the nutritional value of it. And what we found is that we just serve less of it because it's more filling. We also switched from using regular rice to organic jasmine rice for a family meal and my very large family down in Pattaya. And what we found is that there was a big, you know, oh God, we don't like that rice. It's organic. We don't like the rice. But what we found is that it's so much more nutritious for you. It's so much more healthy for you that you wind up eating less. And my nephews, who are 2 and 5, were very, very picky eaters. They are now eating the organic rice. There's something intrinsically tasty about it that was not there in the regular rice. Our fish portions, we only serve 120 grams versus 150. 6 years, never had one complaint. So we're able to stick with sustainable fish and not have to worry so much about the fish costs on our menu. It takes, you got to think out of the box when you start making these choices, you know. But to me, it's a healthy path to go down. It's a long-term change in how we operate food and beverage industries, but it's going to mean that our next generation after, is going to have a healthy resource left, and the planet. It takes thinking out of the box to make these choices, but there are things we can do right now, baby steps. I like to call it baby steps. You know, you do one thing and you get that to work, and then you do another thing, get that to work, but you'll find that simple switch from the mass-produced government subsidized white rice and organic rice, at the end of the day, will not present a larger food cost because you'll be using less.
I will get my chef to talk to you then. Well, I think that's. I mean, I totally agree with you, and then there's no question about it. The only thing is when it's your own business, you can make the call. Mm. But when you're an operator, it's the owner who makes the call. Not, you can persuade, you can make suggestions. Like for shark fin, I mean, we had one property who signed up the last minute. I mean, I was telling Seamus because the owner said, I want to serve shark fin in my restaurant, no matter how much you try to persuade him. And it's actually took the U.S. Embassy to give him a message. They canceled the reservation and they said not coming back here. And then we push forward. So, in an ideal situation, we want to do it all. But in reality is, as you said, baby step where you can. And hopefully that, if you have a conversation like this going on in different groups of people, that it can drive the initiative forward.
You serve two masters, you're right. You have both the owners, shareholders, and your customers that you have to make happy. That's true?
Yeah. Okay, true. So we're going to, because we're running a little bit shorter on time, and I want to save some time for the Q&A at the end, I want to get back to the underwater and ask Liz a question. So we know a lot of the revenue of the livelihoods of Thailand comes, and I mean, it depends a lot on the diving tourism. So what are your concerns about how the loss of sharks could affect this?
Yeah. We can kind of answer this on two levels, kind of two concerns. We have concerns, as do people in the diving industry themselves, so professionals, dive shop owners, these kind of people. People want to see sharks. They want to see big stuff. That's the bottom line. So we've had comments from dive shop owners, who've been here a long time. They say they already have seen a huge shift in the kind of type of diver that comes to Thailand now. People will dive alongside their holiday. People still want to come to Thailand. They'll do the odd dive here and there. That there's not the big tour companies that are sending big groups of experienced divers to dive in Thailand anymore. That's really changed. So people are diving less. We have reports people aren't coming back to dive year on year as they used to, and things like snorkel trips are taking off a lot more. So there's a big shift like that. There will still be a diving industry. It's just changing and adapting and changing the focus really to keep the guests happy. But then there's the concerns for the local people, the staff that work on the boat in dive shops, and the fishermen. We touched on that earlier. We know they are just trying to make a living. Divers get very angry when we see in the markets, baby reef sharks is very, very common. Someone said baby hammerhead sharks were seen in quite a few markets last year. And, no one's ever seen a hammerhead shark when diving in Thailand, but they are clearly there. But what the local fishermen are doing is not illegal. They are just trying to have a living, which is why you see the juvenile sharks in the market. So, there's the concern there that they are catching juveniles, so there's not much left in the ocean. That's what that reflects, which is really sad on many levels.
I see. So there's been quite a concern with the diving community as well, I see.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. They see the decline in numbers. They see the changing guests. Year on year, they don't know how many divers are going to be coming through. There's that uncertainty.
I see this as a huge chain reaction, actually, because if Thailand is a diving community and the divers don't come, then nobody stays in the hotels, and then nobody eating in the restaurants.
You've hit the nail right on the head. Everything is connected.
So I guess this is all connected with each other. So it's quite scary actually for everybody, right?
Again, Thailand has always been known as a top diving destination. You come to see whale sharks, leopard sharks. Mm-hmm. If that doesn't draw them, Indonesia is an example. There's great diving there. It's more accessible. It's cheaper. People will start to go to those other places. And people then won't stay in the hotels in all parts of Thailand.
I've actually seen people stay for weeks and months too as well, just to see all the dive sites. So I guess that would be a really bad shame, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was unless you have something that you really want to say, I want to continue on because there's 2 more questions and I want to leave time because I think both of these questions are quite important. So Bill, for you first, and then I'll end it with Liz, and then we'll have a Q&A. So Bill, sharks and other large fish have found to contain levels of mercury and other toxins that are dangerous to human health. So how aware do you think the public is of these risks, and what do you think we should be doing to increase the awareness? I mean, like, and maybe what restaurant obligations should be in terms of the health risk to their customers?
Yeah, I hate to raid your parade. The American Health Association, the American Heart Association, the American Cancer Society, pretty much every medical body out there has come out and published reports that looking at all the health risks of eating large pelagic fish that have high mercury levels, taking everything into an account, listeria, all the vibrios, cholera, parahemolyticus, whatever, looking at all the health risks with the consumption surrounding the consumption of seafood, it is still the most healthy form of protein on the planet. The reason why you want to stop eating the large pelagic fish, like the swordfish and the sharks, is more of an environmental issue than a health issue. And the catching of these large animals in the kind of numbers we're catching them in now is dangerous to the environment. But in terms about the risk to our health, I mean, you'd have to eat a kilo of bluefin tuna every day for 5 years before that kind of mercury would build up into your system that would make it toxic. There's obviously healthier choices to eat than bluefin tuna, swordfish, the large pelagic fish, but in reality, it's not really the health issues that concern me and most of the medical community or scientists as the environmental impact that's taking place right now.
Okay, so the environmental takes precedence over the health issue at this point.
Yeah, because we're now affecting the health of the planet. We've created such a we're on the verge of the oceans collapsing right now. It's being witnessed in many parts of the world, including the Gulf of Thailand. And this has taken a more, in the last, probably since 2006, bigger precedent than any other man-made, industrial-caused issue is overfishing. We are literally changing the biology of the planet. We're changing the pH of the oceans. I mean, can you imagine that? 75% of the planet. We are literally changing the pH of the oceans right now. There are dead zones in the oceans where there's no oxygen because of massive algae blooms, because there's nothing there to eat the algae. So what we're seeing now is a critical point in time where our ability to change the planet's environment is nearing the point where we're going to destroy humanity. So the health issue aside, there are bigger things, bigger fish to fry. Let's put it that way.
So the environment is definitely very important. So it sounds quite scary, actually.
It's
when you put it
getting a little scary,
in that sense that we're changing over 70% of the Earth.
75% of the Earth planet right now, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so I just want to wrap it up on the optimistic note of things, because we should always leave it into something that's nice and happy. So for Shark Guardians, Liz, I like to ask, so Shark Guardians has been visiting schools across Asia to teach students about sharks and the importance of their conservation. Why do you think it's important to engage the youth themselves, and what has been the reaction so far?
The bottom line is the youth are wonderful. They are sponges, aren't they? They are just, our mission, if you like, is just to try and inspire people, whatever age they are. But children take it on and take it to a whole new level. It really is quite wonderful. They are the next generation. All the things that Bill has just talked about. I would say our presentations, our slants within it is pushing more and more of this big picture. This is why the schools take it. This is why the schools want us back and want everyone to know, because it is this global picture. It is, and we say, you know, save our sharks, we save ourselves. It is the big picture. So the way the children embrace the learning, the big picture, you know, and they create posters and videos and songs to pass that message on. That is why we focus on that education. We focus on the children, most definitely. And then the effects, you know, they are innocent. One of the things we're trying to change is the perception of sharks. People have this danger image. You know, Jaws was there at the beginning. Yeah, we're trying to get away from that, but people still are scared of sharks for that reason. Kids, you know, you tell them about sharks, you show them the 500 species, that they're not all this one man-eating shark, and they go away and tell their friends, you know, sharks are cool. It's something that they pick up on. And we have reports of children dragging their parents away from shark fin restaurants or any restaurant that even mentions shark and things. You know, parents phoning up the school saying, what is my child saying? You know, they pick up on it because it's simple. They understand it, they are innocent, and they're the ones that are going to be able to make the difference in this big picture, because they're going to have to.
And definitely they're the future consumers of the world, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'd like to open the floor to the audience in case anybody had some questions, maybe another 10, 15 minutes. And if you want to direct it to somebody, please do. Introduce yourself briefly, and if you have an affiliation, please let us know where you come from.
Hi, yes, I'm Patrick Wynn with Global Post, and for better or worse, the VP of this club. My question is for Bill. I think everyone in this room is convinced that consuming shark fin is wrong. We're probably preaching to the choir here, but if you could be completely secular about it, coming from the culinary world, is there anything great about shark fin? Like, is there something about the texture or the taste that's compelling?
Shark fin is like eating monkey brains or cannibalism. It's a cultural phenomenon. It's Chinese originally felt that it had aphrodisiac effects, and that was why traditionally it's served at weddings. It has absolutely no flavor whatsoever. There is even a form of artificial shark's fin being made out of mung beans, and they've done trials with it in blind tests and stuff, and it's very, very similar in texture, and it doesn't matter. We have alternatives to shark fin. It doesn't matter. It's not a culinary decision. It's more of a cultural decision, and it's got a lot of tradition behind it. Now it's also become extremely expensive, so there's that whole face thing. You know, by serving shark fin at the wedding, you're showing that you're financially well off. There is no culinary or health reason, or there isn't any. It's cultural.
If I may add, I just learned this from my Chinese chef yesterday. He said the reason that shark fin is very expensive because it normally takes days before it becomes edible, because it's a very tough texture. And now the only reason that shark fin becomes cheaper so they can reach out to more consumers is because they use bleach. Just to add to the appetite, so.
Sounds tasty. Lisa, quick question for you. When you're trying to offer menu options that are more prestigious, was the word that you used, for, say, these Chinese-style weddings, what would you have on hand to offer as an alternative to shark fin soup?
When we refer to something prestigious, it's always the face value, the price. As Bill said, people think that when they're offering something expensive, it's the feel good. So there are things like abalone, there are things like Peking duck. So there are other things, and also in this kind of fusion cuisine, when you can do kind of modern Chinese cuisine. So that the younger couples are actually more receptive to that.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else had some question?
Hello, good evening. I'm an exchange student from America. I'm studying at Mahidol University. My question is for all of you, but mostly for Lisa, your comment about the environment is looked at as an investment. I'm studying sustainable tourism right now, and I'm finding that part of it's hard to convince someone that the environment is an investment, and I think now there's that shift. However, how difficult was it for you to approach your GM and say, what you're doing is wrong? And because I do see, development of hospitality growing, but there's also not a large enough shift in the consciousness of the environment as well.
I think there are a few ways to go about it. First of all, you have to definitely tell them the link to the reputation damage. And as I said, thanks to technology these days with social media, that can go very quickly. Simple thing like, there's a law, not supposed to be, there's a law about, wastewater treatment. But if you go in so many destinations, you walk around, you can see a lot of hotels actually do not have proper wastewater treatment. So they actually, let the untreated water back into the ocean. So sometimes it's a combination of educating, your owners, and also basically put it as a brand standard and said we won't go into this unless you're committed to that. So that's where it is.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? We have one more. Good.
Just coming back to a observation or a question that Seamus put earlier about what could possibly be done. I'm sure there's been some thought given to being a little bit more active in the enterprise of encouraging people to come on board at a corporate industrial level. It's all very well kitchens talking about offering alternatives and scuba divers offering alternative, sustainable and developmental sort of diving practices. But this is all on the non-industrial level. What about the naming and shaming practices? You've got a blue list. What about a blacklist? What about publishing your correspondence with Athene on the website? We're not defaming anybody, but start that sort of process going. A little bit more sort of gloves off.
Did anybody up here have an answer to that?
You can go first.
Yeah, Seamus?
I'll mention something after that.
Okay.
Okay, well, I guess to answer, not 100% sure. It does seem like a good idea. One thing that when we were designing this campaign, we actually worked with the communications department and some professors at Chulalongkorn University. So it was actually, even though we took Fin-Free as a model from a global campaign, we wanted to make it work for Thailand. We wanted to innovate our approach here so that it could also help campaigners in other countries. And we've learned from them as well. But one thing, when we were starting and when we were working with Chulalongkorn, we didn't want to create a kind of a blacklist because we were worried about creating a directory that people could refer to find shark places that would serve shark fin. I think there might be some leverage that you can push onto hotels by naming them, and we've been a little bit reluctant at the start because we want to keep it very much. I've outlined it today here in the club, but we do want to keep it very much a positive campaign, as Nancy mentioned, and I don't think we can do both at the same time. So maybe I've broken the rules a little bit tonight, but it's a small crowd, I think. And we want to give you some insight into our challenges. But there could be a bad cop. I don't know whether it's Greenpeace and I think that could work very much in tandem with a positive kind of CSR program. But I personally I agree with Nancy. We've had this debate internally, and maybe it'll continue, but I agree with Nancy that we need to, for this particular campaign, keep it very positive and CSR and corporate friendly. But you know, I think getting to that truth there, it would be good, just from a personal perspective as well. I'd love to see some of these lies exposed. So maybe I can stop volunteering for Fin Free and create a.
No, you're not allowed to go anywhere.
More radical arm of Fin Free.
Or Sea Shepherd. There are definitely groups out there. I love it when the groups work in tandem and there's a good cop and a bad cop.
I think as well with our social media, so a lot of people post onto our Fin Free Facebook as soon as they see something. When something's out in the media and then a hotel comes out and says, yeah, we don't serve shark fin, but as Seamus put up on the screen, this is from one of our friends going to their friend's wedding and finding out that there was shark fin served in their wedding, and they brought the menu to us and said, look. Or sometimes they just post it up on Facebook. And so it's actually not us exposing, but it's actually the consumers and the people that are bringing it out. So, I mean, and that helps us to be able to say that we're not attacking you, but this is what really happens. So, Liz, you wanted to comment something?
Yeah. There's an organisation trying to kind of compile this blacklist at the moment, and they've said about naming and shaming. It is a difficult one, as Seamus was saying. Like you say, you could create this list, and that's for people who are for it. I think it's the whole awareness picture. If people know that there's this kind of list, or maybe it's just an outlet for some people, as you say, when they see a shark fin restaurant, or the easier ones is a restaurant that's serving shark fin as a signature dish as well, which is a new project, you know, that's in the pipeline with students at the moment. If there's a forum that they can then pass on these restaurants, pass on their concerns, because I know with the dive community, full stop, if they see anything to do with shark or shark fin, everyone goes mental, even though it's not illegal what's happening in that restaurant or hotel. So a list, an outlet, you know, at Fin Free, and we do, you know, people can pass that information on, and then we can use the friendly, tactful approach.
We were actually, one of the debates that Seamus was talking about with this blacklist was, we were afraid we would be promoting the hotels by putting up a blacklist to say, these places serve shark fin, so if you want shark fin, go there. So it's one of the reasons why we went against doing this as well. So it wasn't to just not shame them, but it was, we didn't want to promote it. So, anybody else have some question?
I just like to throw in an idea. Just a personal suggestion. Like, I don't know whether you ever talk to, you know, hotels have corporate accounts. We rely on them a lot, giving away the secret. But if you're able to talk to big accounts, you know, and ask them to do what the American Embassy has been doing for you, that could be a great drive to the campaign, because it comes from the customers. And for us, you know, service industry, customer is the king, right? So that may be the way to go.
Okay.
Hit them in the marketplace.
So just let me hide my name first.
Yeah, you just gave away the farm.
Actually, you're very right. We just had one guest from the U.S., Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth, that came in. She was staying at the Dusatani, and part of her family actually was trying to order shark fin for her in the celebration of her coming here. And she flat out said, no shark fin tonight, none. And she completely dismissed her cousin and said, go away. So, I mean, it really does show when a Chinese family comes out and someone who's very influential comes out and says something. And I believe she did talk to the management about it as well. So maybe that might be our next approach to see if they say something. So I have enough time for maybe 2 more questions. Does anybody have any other questions for our panelists or any of our Fin Free team? Cindy's also here if you want to hear any of her lovely diving stories. Yeah, one question.
Good evening. My name is Terry Patrick. I have a question for the panel. How many of you people have ever tasted shark fin?
No, never.
She's vegetarian.
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, I think coming from a background of who's actually tasted shark fin, I'm actually half Thai, so Chinese also runs in my blood, and it was a very normal thing for my mom to take me to eat shark fin when I was younger, and this was growing up in California. So I would go down to Chinatown and have shark fin, and I thought it tasted really good. I actually really loved it. But as soon as I found this out, which was years later before any knowledge about shark fin came out, once I found out, I decided to quit. And also, my mom does not eat shark fin anymore as well. So I think the generations have changed, and there's a lot of people open to it. And I think that's why we can come out and speak about this. It's just that we do change our ideals. Anybody else wanted to? You're not from an Asian background, right? So why did you taste it? Curiosity.
I've been working in China for many, many years, and banquets, and also I'm a chef, so I explore all kinds of
try
cuisine.
everything. Yeah, okay.
At least 3 times. It's not the shark fin itself that you're enjoying.
It's the soup.
It's the broth. That's the most important part. If you were to just eat a pile of shark fin, you know, almost like jellyfish, you know, it's the sauce you put on the jellyfish, the sauce the soup that you make with the shark fin. It's mainly a texture, and that's why it can be easily replicated with other, you know, mung bean. But that's not what people want. They want the shark fin. But it's the soup that has the flavor. If we just took the shark fin out of the soup and drank the soup and put some glass noodles in it, you'd pretty much be eating the same thing.
Yeah. I actually think I was eating fake shark fin because, one, it seemed a bit too cheap to be real shark fin. And maybe bleached, yeah, but it didn't have any fishy smell. But as soon as I had like a real shark fin, I knew it was very fishy in smell, and it just actually wasn't very pleasant to eat.
There's as many different grades of shark fin as there is rice.
Right, yeah, that's true.
The price can really fluctuate from a very poor, low-quality shark fin to a very, very high-quality shark fin. And you got to remember also that sharks, they urinate through their skin, okay? And if that shark is not properly taken care of, that shark fin is not going to be very good, and it's going to have an ammonia smell to it. Whereas a shark that's been treated with respect and, you know, landed correctly, that'll be a higher quality shark fin, and you will not get a fishy or a strong flavor from it. And that'll all, you know, the price will dictate that. Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, either way, I stopped over 20 years, which kind of shows my age. Secretly. So, any other question? I can take one more question from the audience. Do we have any? No? Okay, then I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. And